So, this is my audience. Everybody say hi.
Hi.
Got 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright. Good afternoon. My name is Ethan Perry, and I am not a crook. I am not a crook. The words spoken more than 40 years ago by Richard Nixon. He spoke those words on November 17, 1973, to the nation, as he addressed what was going on with his presidential scandal. Although most known for Watergate and his involvement, Richard Nixon was more than just a man behind a scandal. Today we're going to consider how Richard Nixon was more than a resigned president, but how he was a son, a father, a husband, a hard worker, and a politician. Let's look at the early years of Mr. Richard Nixon. In Jennifer Peterson's biographical article, Richard Nixon, we see that Richard Nixon was one of 5 siblings. He had 2 brothers at an early age who were diagnosed with meningitis and tuberculosis, and ultimately he lost those brothers at a very early age, which thrust him into adulthood. He had to work hard, he had to be a good student, he had to be a good son. His family were Quakers, they were farmers, and they had a lemon farm, and unfortunately that farm failed. So they took what money they did have, and they threw it into a gas station/store. And at an early age, at 4 a.m. every day, Nixon would wake up, and he would go and help his father by gathering items from the local town. He would go to the store and set it up, and then he would go and have a long day at school just to return back to that store to help his family. You could say Nixon was a family man, and he felt that pressure of losing 2 brothers and having to deal with his mother grieving over that pressure on him to fill in those shoes and those gaps. He also stayed home. You know, he got scholarships to Yale and Harvard, and he turned them down because he was such a family man. You know, they say that the earlier years are really what makes the foundation, but it's the beginning of your career that creates the walls. You know, like I said, he stayed home to go to college, so he decided to go to Whittier College, and he graduated top of his class. He made great grades. Again, he was never known for trouble. And so after completing his time at Whittier, he went on to Duke University, where by his peers he was elected the president of the Student Law Association. Again, he was a family man, he was liked by his peers, he was a scholar, he graduated top of his class at Duke. And so after he finished his time at Duke, he returned home where he met Patricia, his wife. They dated for 2 years, and she finally said yes after saying no a couple times. And over the course of their marriage, they had 2 children. You know, he decided that they wanted to move to D.C. because he wanted to get his foot in the door for politics. And there in D.C., he immediately felt the need to join the United States Navy. And so he served his time, 4 years in the United States Navy, getting all the way to Lieutenant Commander, where he retired, and decided to move back home to California with his family. After he moved back home, he was persuaded to try to run for House of Representatives, and surprisingly, he won by 60%. Again, he was liked by his peers. He was liked by people. He was a very favorable person. And he decided, after running for Congress, he was going to run for Senate. And he won by 700,000 votes. After Senate, he served as Vice President. And ultimately, he attempted to become President of the United States, but he lost to a young man named JFK. After that, he decided to stay home, work on law, and reattempt to go in for his presidency. Nixon's career was easy, and it was pretty great for him, as you can tell. But out of nowhere, it took a downhill turn. Earlier on in Nixon's career, he was most known for his involvement with the Alger Hiss case. Alger Hiss was accused of being a Soviet spy and committing espionage. While everybody else wanted to deny and say, we're not going to pursue this case, Nixon was the only person to push for it. And come to find out, later on, Alger Hiss was taken down for perjury and espionage. But let's make a note that what he pushed so hard in a case for would one day come back around for him. Now, most people know Nixon from the Watergate scandal. The Watergate scandal was during his time as president, where a group of people broke into the Watergate apartment complex, which was the house of the Democratic Party at that time, and they put wiretaps and things like that. And he denied knowing any involvement with this situation. But ultimately, over time, videos came up, recordings came up, papers came up, And that's ultimately what got him caught. In Luke Nichter's biographical book, In the Arena from Valley to Mountaintop, we see that Nixon's career was uphill, 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 and then he was taken down. Less than a year later, after he gave his speech saying, "I am not a crook," he resigned, being the first president to ever resign from office. Although Nixon had his issues as a child in his political career, he was a human just like all of us. He had a hard childhood, dealing with the loss of two brothers at an early age, forcing him to be an adult and having to fill shoes that weren't his to fill. But that added pressure did make him push hard in his education and his career, and he had great success early on. But ultimately, what he was most noted for earlier on in his career is what came around to take down those metaphorical walls that he built so hard and so long. Knowing what you know now, instead of seeing him as this terrible man behind the Watergate scandal, I hope that you can see Richard Nixon as a human, just like you and just like me. Thank you. Hope it focuses. There's one. There's two. And there's three. And there's no backs. How do I stop that?